Good morning, Oceanside. As you're aware, over the past while, starting in the United States, the issue of racial injustice and social injustice has come to the fore. And we as an eldership team have been wanting to respond and been praying on how to do this. In thinking this through and praying it through, I was sent a video via YouTube from a good friend of mine. His name is Alan Frow. We both were in Hillside Church in South Africa, and I was planted out to Canada, and he eventually took over an amazing church in Southern California called Southlands. And I picked up this YouTube video that he did as he and his community in Los Angeles, he's been there over 15 years, are dealing with these issues. And I saw it this morning and it almost brought me to tears. We felt that it would be a good thing to put Alan's video up there because it certainly does represent our hearts. We are praying for you and we're trusting God through this that healing and restoration will come not only in our community, not only in our nation, but in the nations of the world as people grapple with this very, very important issue. So God bless you and look forward to chatting to you soon. Thank you.
Well, hello, Southlands. I know many of us have heavy hearts after the week we've experienced in our nation. And I also know many of us have confused minds because there are so many opinions flying around. And I just want to take some time to talk about some biblical convictions we have with regards race and protest. And if you will afford me the freedom to read a little bit more than I would normally do, just words are so important at the moment. We know that the video of the graphic and horrific death of George Floyd earlier last week sparked a national outrage, and it came on the back of Amy Cooper's false report about a black man threatening her when he wasn't. And that came back on the back of Ahmaud Arbery's shooting at the hands of two white men as he ran in his own neighborhood. And that was all in the space of one terrible week. As Will Smith said, racism isn't getting worse, it's just getting filmed. And George Floyd's dying words, "I can't breathe," were a plea to the officer who had his knee on his neck. And though the officer ignored his pleas, those words did not go unheard. They've now become an anthem of protesters across the nation who feel the suffocating effects of racial injustice that persist in this nation. Many of the protests have been peaceful, but we also know that many of them have been spoiled by rioting and looting. And there is a real temptation for some of us just to keep our head down and avoid the issue, but we do not feel like we can do that. And I want to talk to you clearly about what we believe as a leadership team here at Southlands and how we are calling you as Southlanders to follow Christ at this tumultuous time. While we know there's almost universal agreement about the unjust nature of Floyd's death, there's not universal agreement about how to respond as Christ followers. Some want to protest. Some are even open to joining with rioting and looting. Others are very resistant, feeling like you're being co-opted by a political agenda. Others feel a rightful concern for law enforcement and don't want to be associated with something that is lawless. So what are we to do? What do we believe at this time that we are to do? Firstly, I want to say that we believe as an eldership team that racism is a Bible issue before it's a political issue. And we want to condemn racial injustice in all its forms. This conviction comes from the Bible's insistence that every single person, every human, is created with the imago Dei, in the image of God. And whenever dignity is robbed from an image bearer, actually we are called to take responsibility. The Lord wants his people to love justice, to do mercy, and walk humbly with him, our God, as it says in Micah 6 verse 8. We hear in the book of Genesis that when Cain killed his brother Abel, God said that Abel's blood cried out to him from the ground. And he came and asked Cain, "Where is Abel?" In other words, God is not deaf to the cries of injustice, and he comes looking for a people who will take responsibility for it. Unfortunately, Cain's response was, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And actually, the Bible shows us that we are our brother's keeper when they suffer injustice. God is looking for a people who would be responsible. Also, we find in the book of Genesis that Abraham, the father of our faith, was an Arab who was promised a family from every nation under heaven. So if we are believers in the Bible, we are part of a multicultural, multi-racial family. That's so important. So racism is completely counter to our family identity. So I would recommend that we do not deflect from the issue at hand, which is racial injustice. And we do not focus on rioting and looting, as wrong as that is. We do not allow it to rob from the issue at hand. Looting and rioting are wrong, but using the wrongness of looting to drown out the discussions of the racial injustice that led to the looting is also wrong. And so we believe that racism is a Bible issue, and we must condemn it in all its forms. Secondly, we believe that the healing of racism is at the heart of the gospel. The gospel, firstly, reconciles a sinful people to a holy God, but it doesn't stop there. The gospel reconciles people to one another. The book of Ephesians says that the gospel destroys the dividing wall of hostility between Jew and Greek, between slave and free, between male and female, between barbarian and educated. The gospel reconciles people one to another. And the early church struggled with this. There was a racism in the early church in that people tended to hold Gentiles, non-Jews, at arm's length. The Apostle Paul had to oppose Peter to his face when he would only eat with his kind, and said, "You are not living in line with the gospel." In other words, when there's racism in our heart, which is not always hatred, sometimes it's just preference, sometimes it's ignorance, sometimes it's indifference. We have not then understood the fullness of the gospel. So as a gospel people, we are called to allow the gospel to redeem those parts of us that are proud, that are prejudiced, that are indifferent, that walk in preference, and allow the gospel to create one holy nation out of many, many people groups. Let's be humble and allow the gospel to heal us. Thirdly, we believe the gospel of reconciliation calls us to build deeper friendships with people of different colors and different cultures, especially for us as white people at this time. It's so important that we develop friendships with people of color that are attentive and empathetic. Too often I hear white people say, "Yeah, I've got plenty of friends who are people of color," but are they really attentive, listening relationships? If we do, we will find that there is deep pain in common experience among people of color. One of my closest friends is a black pastor in our city called Vaughn Jarrett. And his family and our family are very close. We've traveled the world together, preached in one another's pulpits. And this week, I took time to listen to Vaughn's pain and his lament in terms of what it was to talk to his kids about the current moment. And he had to talk to his son, who loves to run along the road, after Ahmed Albury had been shot, and said, "You've got to be careful about running in white neighborhoods." He had to speak to all his kids who love sports, saying, if a ball goes over the fence, you can't just jump over. And I had to say, that is not my experience. That is not my children's experience. The color of my skin fundamentally changes my experience here in this great nation. And as we build these relationships of empathy and attentiveness, our hearts will go deeper into understanding the injustice and pain of racial injustice. Fourthly, we believe it is not enough to have a righteous cause of fighting racism. We must have righteous ways. And now this might be talking more to people who are very, very keen to protest. But we as Christians, as we protest, cannot take our cue from the culture. We need to lead the way as peacemakers with righteousness. That's what Jesus called us to do. Of course, we may feel outrage and indignation, but as followers of Christ, we have the power of grace to resist lawlessness and to walk in a culture of honor to all. Even those law enforcers that we feel a sense of mistrust towards, we are called as Christ followers to walk in a spirit of honor to them. And as I talk about the Christian call to protest, I think of my brothers in law enforcement who have an absolutely impossible task at this time. And may the Spirit of Christ give us wisdom to navigate between calling out the evil of racism, but actually honoring law as we do it. That is unique. That is gospel. Let's guard our own hearts in this tumultuous time. So Southlands, we are going to continue this conversation. We are not going to duck it. We're going to continue to engage it with preaching, with prayer, with building friendship, with listening, with speaking out where we need to speak out, with repenting where we need to repent, and with acting justly where we need to do that. And we're going to do it in the Spirit of Christ, our suffering Savior, who died to reconcile men and women to Him, but who died to reconcile people to one another. Let's trust Him as we move forward at this time.